do. Oh, is this a show?
Are we live?
Are we live?
You're in the forest. He's against the
live, or is it Limericks, as they say sometimes.
Yes, but thank you everyone for tuning in for another episode of the Tim and Jim Show. I am Tim Sohn here in the forest. I brought the forest back with the bears and the turkeys, although they're somewhere wandering around. And excited for this episode of the Tim and Jim Show with our amazing guest, Rose Horowitz, who's actually in my Survive and Rise with Live video class. And she does many other things. And Jim Fuse down below, why don't you take it away, my friend?
Well, yes, thanks for joining us today. Very excited to have Rose, join us today. And really, it's a very interesting topic because it's something that I think a lot of live streamers struggle with. I would even say podcasters is, how do you find great guests? And even more so with live streaming, how do you turn it into a great show? And so, Rose, thank you so much for joining us. We've been connected on Twitter for a little while, and then eventually we'll get Tim to be a little better at Twitter. Maybe we can both coach.
I think I first met you through Madeline Sklar's Twitter Smarter.
Absolutely. That's right.
I was on the show just a year ago, a year ago.
Long ago? It doesn't seem like
January 30th. Yeah.
So. Corona year,
I'm glad. That's Tim's. I know, Tim, right? You wish we were back in 2020 right now, but we won't go into that at the moment.
No, we won't go into that.
You are doing a lot of stuff. You're, as I want to say, is it Women to Follow? Is the hashtag?
Yes. Yes, I created this hashtag. Actually, it was in the summer 2 years ago. I was, at the Y, came out of my class and saw this post from Gender Avenger that talked about a study that was done that said that not only do the 3,000 reporters in DC, the men follow other men, follow and retweet, but the same percentage, I think it was 72% follow women do that too. And I was just like, this is crazy. So I just said, I was just sitting at the Y, put out a tweet that said, let's get this Twitter party started. I'm going to name 3 women to follow and I asked a bunch of people from different fields and different countries. And I headed to the library to do my work and boom, it blew up. So I was very
incredible.
Cool. And so I had 12 million, a reach of 12 million in 2 weeks. And I wrote a column about it for Gender Avenger. I was on Sri's New York Times show with Neil Parag. And then I said, well, what can I do with this? And I thought it'd be really cool to do profiles of different women in different fields. And I've been doing that, and I do them as Twitter threads, and then I put them on Medium now. So those have had, each one gets, 20, 30,000 views sometimes. So it's been very cool.
That is so cool. So Rose, tell us about your background and how you ended up getting so involved with live streaming, because I know you're very involved with Sri's team. And in fact, I just talked with Neil a couple of weeks ago, and the small world theory. Neil lives in Springfield, Virginia, where I grew up. So it's kind of funny that we talk about it. Tell my parents still live there, but I will never move back. Just to be frank, Mom and Dad, if you're watching, I'm not moving back.
Good schools, though? Is that?
It was back then. In fact, my high school got renamed recently from Robert E. Lee to John Lewis High School. So yeah, there's a little bit of that Confederate thing going on in Virginia.
Okay. I got involved, I guess, I'm a journalist and, I've loved doing investigative reporting, covered business, covered international business, things like shipping and, all kinds of trade, international trade, and done features. I think when I was first at the AP, I did a feature about Dr. Spock, interviewed him. That was a great one. Yeah. So, and then, I've been, so I started the AP and then I worked at a few newspapers, and then I've been freelance for a while and also raising 4 kids. So, and twins were the last 3 and 4. So that was a double blessing. And then I started, I said, what is this Twitter thing going on? And I joined. And one of my 12-year-olds, I was in the car, I said, hey, oh, look, I'm at 100 followers. And I turn around, it's like Mr. Poops and Farts. Okay, so 12-year-olds. So anyway, but I love Twitter because I love news. And I think, Twitter is a great place to really, before you see it on CNN, you see it on Twitter. And if you're just discerning, don't retweet something you haven't seen or checked out with a few other people. It can be a really cool thing. And I started to, get active on Twitter. And I met another journalist said, you have to meet Sri Srinivasan. And I did, and went to some of his social media weekends. And I guess, and then when the pandemic hit, I saw he was doing like a Facebook live show with Dr. Lippy Roy on a Friday night. I said, oh, well, what's this? And then he started to, he wanted to do this every night. And he asked people if anybody wanted to volunteer. And I thought it'd be cool to do that. And so I started, and I guess myself and Vandana Menon, who had been just graduated from University of Pennsylvania master's program. She and I eventually became producers. And we did 250 shows, 250 consecutive days from March 14th, I think, until after the elections. And then we've still continued it, but it's like a vacation. We do it once or twice a week. So. And then I also through Sri and the Digimentors, I am a producer on a new show with two women surgeons, Dr. Chandra Sekar and Dr. Marian Kurian. And it's called She's on Call. And it's a sort of, I helped conceive and plan it and develop it. And I'm one of the producers, and it's a cool show. It's 6 months running.
That's amazing. I mean, and you probably have seen yourself come a long way as a producer, going from show 1 to show 250, because it's amazing what you learn, right? It's just those little things that you maybe didn't realize. Do you ever look at that and go back and think to yourself, like, wow, I've really come a long way in 250 episodes?
I think as I grew, as my responsibilities grew, when we started it, Sri was doing the back end show, posting, promoting, getting the guests. And, he was like, once he's, and I was, I started to tweet and promote it, but I was tweeting live, Venda and I. And then we said, well, how can we, I think Sri needed some kind of break, from that work. So it was not his full-time job as it wasn't for any of us. And I ended up booking a lot of, guests, part of my responsibility. So, but now I've seen more, as I'm on StreamYard, how it works, and how to put banners, and I've helped, and I also with Digimentors, when we've been busy, I've been a producer and helped with events like University of Rhode Island was going to have a seminar in person, and they couldn't do that, so we took it, we made it virtual, and we had Christine Amarpour and
that's amazing,
Nick Kristoff and Cheryl Udon on the show. So anyway, so it's been fun.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I've learned a lot. I think the booking, the kind of, you could ask me this question, but I think my background in news, really set me up well for loving that part of it.
Yes, absolutely. And we should thank everyone for tuning in, no matter what time it is, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what time zone you're in. We really appreciate you taking time out to be with us. We want to thank Karen Rice for being here. She says, howdy here on Facebook. Hello.
Hi, Karen.
In Facebook land. Both Karen and Rose and many other people are in my Survive and Rise with Live video course. And
which is a cool course. And I took it when I was just starting with Sri's show, when we were doing 250 episodes, and Tim would give us homework and I'd be like,
Crack that whip.
Yeah. So when the show ended, I said, okay, I'm gonna do this again. When the show ended, the 250 episodes, and it's been fun. There've been people who are artists who want to do an art show, and other people who want to like have purple hair and do just a fun show. And so it's been a good mix. And Tim's a great teacher, so endorse him.
Well, thank you for that. And it's great to have you in the chorus. You're a repeat offender, and Karen is going to be a repeat offender. And at least one other person. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing in terms of how my course is going, but it's great to have you guys back. And I'll just briefly say that there's another round of the course coming up on March 15th. This time it will be in a 6-week format. So if you're interested in starting your own live show, I'll post the link down below in the comments. But don't want to get all salesy weirdo here, but just wanted to briefly mention it since Rose did mention it. And thank you to Stefan for being here. Everyone do the Tim and the Rose and the Jim. Hashtag all those things. Who else is tuning in? Stefan. Tammy McLaughlin is here. Hello, Tammy.
Hi, Tammy.
Thanks
Tammy is heading an event that's going to be on March 17th. I'm pretty sure it's March 17th for Sober St. Patrick's Day. And she's head of a group. She's, managing an event that's going to be live, and it's going to have singing, Irish dancers, Irish cooking, all kinds of fun stuff. So tune in to follow Auntie Tam on Twitter.
That's awesome. Good to know. All right, Jim. So let's dive into the conversation here. Do you want to take question number 1 for Rose here?
Yeah. So Rose, what is a great guest for a live stream show? Because I'm sure there's many factors that are involved.
Other than you, I mean, you are the definition of one, but other than that.
Okay. Aside from me, yes. I think it, you can kind of either plan a show around a topic, or sometimes, you get a great guest and the great guest can be, can lead to a topic. And other times, you think one guest, can be the whole show, in the case of Sri's show, which wasn't always on some aspect of COVID-19, economic, political, social justice, medical. And so if you're doing a show about, COVID medically, you might want to have more than one or two, you might want to have more than one unless you get Fauci, of course, but if you get Fauci, you're going to go with just Fauci, so a great guest is somebody who is, I think, has to be knowledgeable, smart about what they're talking about, up to date on what they're talking about, and personable, that you want to listen to them. If, you don't, I think you don't want somebody who's going to be, drone or not, be expressive. And
do you think sometimes maybe is it good to maybe go see if you can find, like, have they been live other places to kind of get a feel for their, their style? Because maybe, like you said, you might think someone knows a lot, but then on camera they kind of freeze up and maybe aren't quite as energetic as you would like. Is that something that you've ever taken a look at? Especially,
yeah. I mean, I think when I have the chance, we were booking a guest actually for She's on Call, and we were doing a show for Valentine's Day. And we had booked this scientist, his name is Dr. Justin Garcia at the Kinsey Institute. And he's great. And he had been on a show, actually on Sri's show, one of Sri's episodes. But then we needed another guest. And so I was, looking around, and I found this woman. It was in Australia, and she's a sex tech expert and has her own podcast called Future of Sex. And some of the doctors were like, how do we check her out? It's like, I said, and I knew that, I saw a big talk she gave in Australia. She's a leading industry. I, Googled her. She was quoted in the New York Times, et cetera. And she was fabulous. Awesome. So, I mean, I think when you can, you do. I mean, with a live show, getting a guest, sometimes, what if a guest cancels out, cancels two hours before, you have to get somebody quickly, but, You're still always looking for somebody who's knowledgeable, somebody who can add to the conversation, somebody you want to be talking to and that other people want to listen to.
And this is a great example of that, right? We had a guest, an amazing guest, JJ Ramberg, who is going to be on the show. She had to bow out unexpectedly yesterday, she let us know. So I was texting lots of people and so grateful Rose could be here. Yeah, so it's always, that's kind of a good point. Like when you're booking guests, like what do you do, Rose, if your guest cannot come, right?
Well, we've done shows, I mean, where it's happened. And we also did shows with Sri where he teaches at Stony Brook, and he was having his students do shows. Oh. And, they weren't, awesome. I mean, some of the shows were amazing. And sometimes though, you weren't, and Vandana was helping those students, was helping the students to prepare and check in with her. But, sometimes like an hour before, she said, I haven't heard from them. I don't know where they are. And, one had they sort of had different roles and they would take turns doing them. So I think once time the student managed to get a professor on the subject, and, she was able to join us. But, you really do have to think fast. If you can't, fortunately with Sri's show, there were occasions, I guess I think I remember once where it was a Friday night, guest canceled, and, you don't cancel the show if you're telling people you're going to be on. I think, you keep it consistent. So I think we had to talk about, the show had been on maybe 2 months, and Sri and I talked on camera, and Vandana joined us, talk about what we've learned, what have we learned in doing the show? What have we learned about COVID? What have we learned about what people are doing?
And I think that kind of goes to a point that Sri teaches a lot, which is connect with people before you need them, right? Like always Absolutely. Be networking.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jim?
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, we've had that, before as well. We had an episode where, unfortunate for our guest or potential guest, they had a family emergency. And so to Rose's point, we knew that everyone's expecting to see the show. And so we just came up with a topic that the two of us are able to talk about because of our experience. And I think, so it's always good to kind of have in your, so to speak, that hip pocket, kind of that backup of folks that you would love to have on your show. It's not that, because sometimes, one of the benefits of booking is, right, sometimes you don't have an opening for a while. So if an opening occurs, you may have people that have been wanting to be on the show, and it just works out for both parties. So I think that's a really great point, Rose, that, building those relationships and knowing if these people, this is really someone we'd have to, love to have on the show. And even sometimes maybe like in our cases, co-host, maybe one of us has something come up. Don't be afraid to bring in maybe someone, like yourself, to be a kind of that guest co-host to keep the show going on. Because, I always like having, a co-host. I think Tim feels
the same way.
And, so it's good to think about like, okay, who could step in and understands the nature of the show as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And I think networking, I know, I interviewed Kelly Hoey, for A Woman to Follow. And then I've actually been part of her Build Your Dream Network group. And, I think it's so important to have a wide and diverse network, because you never know, like if we want to do a show, I want to do a show about actors, what they're doing. And you never know, and I actually texted somebody with the Irish business group, and she had a friend who was an actor, and he was really happy to help me. And, within an hour I had 2 guests, and they were both terrific. So, you really have to, I'm not an actress, but, you want to, you want to have a wide network. And I guess being a journalist for a while, I have a lot of contacts. I mean, I can kind of go, I think they let me follow up to 5,001 on Twitter. And I can even just, look at that and I will find people. And for Women to Follow, we have a list at Stacey Kratz called Hey Kiddo. Her handle is Hey Kiddo on Twitter. But when I started the Women
she's
to Follow,
incredible.
We have a list now of 1,800 names, that are Women to Follow. So you have to be resourceful.
Yeah, definitely. And Karen is saying, to the point you were just making, have you considered having a backup topic you can do on your own in case your guest cancels at the last minute? And Jim, shout out to your sneeze. And also, this happened to us just a few weeks ago. Somebody else couldn't make it. And so we took on the show ourselves and we talked about virtual events, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Everybody knows something about something, so,
Well,
and
I also like, it's been brought up before. One of the things is, like if I were to ask you, Tim or Rose, like if I were to say, I'm going to give you 30 minutes to speak, like almost like off the cuff, is there a topic you could speak about for 30 minutes? Obviously, I think in knowing you two, you both do. And that sometimes can be that idea, because if it's something you're passionate about, you don't need preparation because you're ready to just dive into the topic.
Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, StreamYard. Or either, actually.
Speak about Dunkin' Donuts for 30 minutes.
No, I think that's true. I actually am signing up for some network of podcasters, like they match you, a guest and podcast, and they're asking me like, what are the 10 questions I have to ask myself in this form? Like, what are the 10 questions we can ask you? And I there are a lot of topics, and I'm but you do want to your point, you do want to find somebody, there are guests that we've had, if we're doing a show maybe about nonprofits helping people, who might be helping people in need during COVID, like have sprouted up, because we did a lot, several shows like that to highlight those people. Sometimes, you need more than that one nonprofit, because you want to bounce, and have somebody else to say, oh, well, we're doing this and we're doing that. So, you're all on the same topic, but you're getting different perspectives.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So shortly, guys, we're going to go to our sponsors video, StreamYard. We love StreamYard to sponsor this show, and we love using StreamYard to produce our show, but we should tune into a few people who are tuning in. Alan Katz is saying, yay, Rose. Do you know Alan, Rose?
I do. He happens to be my husband.
Oh, well, shout out to him.
Yes. He's a children's book writer and a very funny guy who writes funny books and has written for television. And he has been very helpful in connecting me with, like last night I booked a children's book author. And I was going for him, but then I looked him up, and he started his own publishing company. And this is, he's a African-American writer, and his wife is African-American. And they founded this company called Just Us Books to to reach kids who are children of color, who there were no books about them. And, you find out a great story. The Cheryl Hudson was trying to decorate their room for their child, and they couldn't find any like things or books, that had African-American characters. So she created a book called Alphabets, and you had, I think the A last night she told us was A for Apple, A for, I don't know, something else, and A for Africa. So each letter had something to do with Africa.
Very cool. Very cool.
So.
And Tim, we have a couple of our previous guests in the audience, and include one of my favorite people, Samantha Kelly, who's coming up from Ireland.
Awesome.
Gail has put in for being a guest co-host fill-in. We'll
that. Always have a backup.
Got that. I see you there. So. Yeah, so Samantha, thank you for joining us. We know it's getting a little late there in Ireland, but you're still awake, and we definitely appreciate it.
You all have to know Samantha's handle, which is Tweeting Goddess.
Yes.
And she's really been great on Twitter. She's very generous and very supportive.
Magic. She's always sprinkling Twitter magic. So
yes. I haven't met her yet in person, but hope to.
All right, cool. So we will see you guys in 15 seconds after this brief message from our sponsor.
I got to send you the gift, Tim, so you can play your gift.
Yes, I'm working on making one of you, Jim. Stay tuned for that one.
It can't be identical though. Like, look what you're both wearing. Are you both wearing StreamYard shirts?
We are.
But with different color lanyards.
Strings. We just, that's something we
So
realized.
you're fraternal twins, not identical.
Right, exactly. And we are here with Rose Horowitz. We are talking about how to find great guests for your live shows and how to level up your live streams. So Rose, tell us a bit more. You've been working with Sri for 250 plus episodes. What have you learned in terms of finding guests, or have they been finding you, or how has that been working? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. I think, it works both ways. I would say probably 90% or so, maybe 80-90% of the guests that we are finding. There are some guests, who are coming out with a new book, or have a new nonprofit, a cause that want, that come to us. And so when we were, we had a kind of in producer, kind of hashtag that we would label all those so that we knew where they were if we needed them. So like if we didn't get a guest, we could go to one of those people, or just have, just helped you to store, have a big group, to draw from. But I think the show being tied to news, that, changed. So we were doing a lot of shows where we always paid attention to it. Our, one priority for us was to have diverse guests. And so we had no manels. So if it was, we wouldn't want to have like 5 guests. And we also wanted to be, diverse in terms of color. And so we, if you knew you had a guest who was white, let's say, and you wanted to have 3 guests, you had to find somebody who was Asian or Indian. We had one Native American, but and I think that was very proud that we were able to do that. So we were doing that like before George Floyd. I think, when that happened, people said, and companies came out and said, we are for justice for all. And, but we were doing it way before that. But I guess if we were going to do a show around when that was happening and people were being hurt in Portland, and, we wouldn't have probably done a show, or we had a show maybe scheduled to focus on a Broadway actress. And if it wasn't connected to anything relevant socially or, with what was going on, we put that on hold. So I think you have to be aware of, what's going on. And, you always want to, I think, check also with a guest that you're going to ask, where are they now? Because sometimes you could check their Facebook page and they've just suffered a loss or something, or they have something that they want to talk about. So does that answer your question?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's such a good point, Rose, about just like the context and the relevancy, because now more than ever, I had to get it in there. So many things are changing so quickly. You never know what's going to be happening in culture, in the news, in the world, right? It's so fluid.
It is. And I think even, any kind of show, even if it's not related to the news, I think you have to be aware of what's going on, because, and then, even I had to be aware, as I tweeted, sometimes I was getting screenshots, and if I had the doctors talking about, the deaths, I couldn't put a shot, where they happened to be laughing,
Yeah.
So, and that the same goes with, how you plan your show and knowing what the right context.
That's true. Rose, could you talk a little bit about, so you find guests for the show, but you're on Twitter, you're live tweeting. Could you just talk a little bit about what you do with that?
Yes, I guess. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of experience live tweeting, although I've always I actually like it. I guess I started out as a, AP wire reporter.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And the first thing they had me do was I had to open up the bureau at 6 a.m. in Pittsburgh. And I had to scan, the news for things that were to write it in a way that it was good for radio was the first, priority. But, scanning the news, seeing what was going on. And, and then in my reporting, this was before we had cell phones and everything, but I would go to see a speech, Argentine president would be speaking at the plaza, and I'd have to be, the first one to get to the phone and I'd phone in a story. And fortunately, there were editors at that time, but now that's changed because now
I remember those days.
Yeah. But I was at a local paper, chain paper a few years ago as an assistant managing editor. And the priority was always digital first.
Yes.
So if you were passing a fire on the way to work and, or somebody was killed or something happened, you put it on first before anybody saw it. So that was interesting, that's a total, in other ways, being at a paper after many years it was like nothing changed. It was still terrible office, terrible cafeteria, everybody's racing to cover. And now, I think with Twitter, you do have to be, maybe even before I tweet anything that day, I will look at the New York Times and the Washington Post, see what the headlines are. I watch, news at night to see also I kind of am spotting guests, who would be, talking about a certain topic, and I'll take a screenshot sometimes so I can, I know their name. Sort of always on the lookout for interesting. You have to be curious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And, news. I think. I don't know if you wanted to book people and you knew nothing about what you wanted, then you're really nowhere, right? I mean, if you wanted to be substantive, unless you want to do a comedy show and it would just be me telling jokes, which we don't want, My husband, we can do that before. So, and live tweeting, let's see, what is Stefan saying?
Stefan says Rose has turned live tweeting with quick thinking screen grabs into a true art form. I mean, think about it. 250 live shows. # pro status, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. And I need more coffee so I can talk.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I got, that I think I'm quick, but now I'm better. And you have to know what to listen for. Kind of, you could start tweeting something and then you hear something else. And, you're like, and now I say, okay, no, that quote is better. I'm just gonna, ditch this part. I try to save it. Now I also secret, I used to be writing quotes, but now I do it all on the computer. So I'll take notes on the computer because it can't go anywhere. Something crashes or something, it's there. And that's really useful. I think, you just have to be a good listener. You have to be quick. Some people tweet in a different way, I might tweet, I like to capture quotes or, things like that. But other people might say, here we are talking about social media and getting guests. And that might be their way of doing it. I like to hear what people are saying. So I usually try to capture a quote if I can. That's, I don't know anyone else, but, and then sometimes, those quotes, if a guest retweets them or, they'll get a lot of play. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes, you might want to go back and get instead of a screen grab, I think on my post today about the show, I posted a live video of Maria Ressa talking. Maria Ressa is a Filipino-American journalist who is one of the crusaders of press freedom. Mm-hmm. And I thought that for today's show, if I'm talking about great guests, I would post a picture and, post a video of her.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It makes it so engaging, especially with the video. She's using those hand gestures and just captures your attention. What do you think, Jim? You are like the king of Twitter. What do you think about what Rose is saying?
No, I think she's right on the money. I think just the fact that she's using engaging content like a video to catch people's attention, right? It's stopping this scroll. I mean, the one thing about live streaming too is the fact that live streaming allows us to interact with our audience like we're doing here today. And that I think is actually an advantage over recorded video, because sometimes the context is lost. There's not that feedback. And I think, this helps us build, the know, like, and trust relationships even more so. And I think, to give credit to what Shree has done with the 250 consecutive shows. I mean, he has a tremendous following because people knew that he was going to be there, and he's tackling some of those issues that other people weren't talking about. And he basically has his own network. It's like, he didn't have to get permission from ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, whoever. You can just do that. And I think that's one of the really powerful things about what live streaming is allowing us all to do, is to have a voice.
And I think what's also been exciting about our show as we began it, even though he has this following, which, this huge following, is that once we started to do it, it was almost became like a family. People would, say, oh, I'm here, I'm joining in. And as I tweeted too, I would see what the interest was in the comments, and, maybe take my tweet to that direction. But of course, we've talked to every show, like Jonathan Borstein, who helps produce Stefan's show, tunes in on every show, and we say he's our most loyal, viewer, because he tunes in on every show. And it's just, so I think, and during COVID, when we were so isolated, and it wasn't a Zoom call too, because it was using StreamYard is much more interactive. We could see people's comments, as we're talking, and then we also to like, when we reached an anniversary of a show, like I think for our, July 4th might have been our 50th show. I don't know. But we used an app where people could send in a video and we could play it, like a 1-minute video. I love the show because, or, do more of this.
I love that.
So I think, aside from the numbers, I think the engagement counts, and we were able to really engage.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Jim Fuse over there in the brick room, would you like to ask Rose the next question?
Yeah. So Rose, should we have a process when we book guests? What has your experience been in regards to that?
Yes, I think that we didn't have a really tight process with only 2 producers and 3. But we did have like a weekly call where we check in and see, where we each are with booking guests, and where we think the show should go, as in response to news guests. What was the other part of the question, Jim?
So your experience then has been that you guys have, I guess, as the show went on, you got more of a process to, like you said, following up, and it's like, okay, do we have all our holes covered? We got somebody every day, that sort of thing.
Yeah, like maybe on you check in on Sunday. Do we have every day, or what days do we need somebody? What days did somebody drop out at the last minute? We were counting on so and so, or sometimes somebody let's say a book author got double booked, or they had to do another show. We would have them on another week, depending on the guest. Sometimes, with Maria Ressa, but then sometimes it was just very sudden. Like, I guess with Maria Ressa, I saw that she was in court again. And because I follow her on social media, and I pulled over on the road to follow it and tweet to her. She was already following me. And I, asked her, can we have, we'd love to have you on the show. And she said, yes. And I called her and he said, are you really? I said, yeah. So a lot of I think I mentioned in my tweet, we booked a 16-year-old on the show out of the blue. Sri had seen that this 16-year-old high school student had posted that Trader Joe's marketing was she thought racist, and had asked,
I remember that one. I saw that.
Yeah. She had written a letter to Trader Joe's, and it had kind of gone viral that this young girl, this young woman had done this. So I found her on Twitter and I texted her. I did. She didn't follow me. She didn't have a lot of followers, but I said, hey, it's Rose Horowitz 31, and we have a show, and I decided I did have, like, in part of my process is I did have kind of a way to ask people, this is the show, this is what we're about. These are some of, big guests we've had. This is how many people have viewed our show and what channels we're on. So, that's, I guess, part of the process. But if you have that in place, you got to jump on news when you see it. And we had her that night, on the show, this 16-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Tammy says, Rose is a great teacher too. You taught her how to create an Instagram story. So
yeah.
Shout out to Rose.
Yeah. Thank you.
Were you going to say something, Rose, about how you met her?
No, Tammy I met through Sri, and then post in pandemic, she was coming out to do an event or to meet somebody for her Irish event, and said, hey, I'm going to be on my way. And we met, but then, we were supposed to meet outside, and it turned out the restaurant, in New Haven it was so cold. So we sat there, very far from each other. But I did teach her, she's done Instagram. She just didn't know how to do a story.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Kenneth says you have to be able to improvise on the fly to survive, baby. And Stefan says Rose has booked so many interesting guests. The stories and interviews have been fascinating.
And a shout out to Stefan, because Stefan,
yes,
knows a lot of people. And so he told us he knew the woman, Dawn Porter, who is a filmmaker who had just done a documentary about John Lewis. And
wow,
this was like in months ago. And then finally, she found time and we had her on the show, and she was terrific. So Stefan, has been great in sometimes, suggesting guests, and he knows people that I don't, from film and photography. And so.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so many of us, Rose, Stefan, Tammy, so many of us know or are connected because of Sri and his social media weekends or whatever events or social media we bumped into each other, right, Rose?
Yeah, no, it's great. It's been great. So I can bounce off ideas that I have for, if I want to do a live show or, or whatever, an article I want to write, or, can count on people who will amplify it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's awesome to have the support of people. That's such a good point about, like showing up for other people's shows or helping other people by retweeting about their shows and things like that. Right. I think that if you're going to be successful in Twitter, you want to be generous. Yes. Because, and something Sri always taught us, but I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Why would, if I'm trying to get out to something, let's say, something great, not like an ordinary, but I wrote, let's say, a great profile of a leading attorney on civil rights. If you see that and the cause, I mean, I guess, you get respect. If you have respect for somebody, you want to amplify them, and it's going to just come back and help you, because they'll do this, they'll do the same for you. So true. And Rose, look who's here in the comments. Hi, this is Dr. Sujana, who's been great to work with. Hi, thank you for tuning in. I guess you're having between patients. But Sujana and Marina have been terrific to work with. They, with that show, with the doctors, they usually know what doctors they want, and sometimes we get to have a say, but they really never had a show, and we did some dry runs, and then we did some soft ones, but they've been so great in we sort of try to
have developed more themes for the show when we can, Valentine's Day, football show, but sometimes it's going to be
Tim, did you hear that? Football. Did that catch your ear?
Yeah.
We did. We had the only woman who is the head doctor for an NFL team and NBA team.
Wow.
Dr. Robin West. And
cheers to that.
Yeah. So we had her that day for the Super Bowl, and she was the doctor who took care of Alex Smith.
Yeah, that's an amazing story, because that's actually my team, the Washington football team. So
awesome.
There was amazing piece on 60 Minutes about that.
Yeah. So we used, once I realized we had her, and I don't follow football that much, but I mentioned Alex Smith, and my husband said, "Well, you know who he is." I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure." but we, we went, and he remembered that she'd been on 60 Minutes talking about Alex Smith. She was the first on the field, the first doctor.
Well, there you go, Jim. You got your sports segment in. Jim always has a sports mention, so Rose, you let him.
Well, now I know who to turn to when I need a sports guest.
Right? There you go, Jim.
Well, I don't know if I'm a sports guest, but I can talk about it.
Well, I mean, somebody to tell me who would be a good guest. That's what.
Yeah. So thank you all for tuning in. We're going to start wrapping up the show now, but Rose, just one more question for you.
Yes.
Have you ever had any regrets about getting a guest? You don't have to name the guest. And I guess one other question would just be, has there ever been a guest that you got that you were really surprised by, like they were just a really great interview?
Yes, on all those counts, I guess. I mean, not on every count, but sometimes, guests will say they can come on, but they may not have thought out their Wi-Fi, and that can be tricky. But
yes.
I don't blame the guests, but it's just like they should be trying to find out. And we've had guests who came on by phone, and you really have to be like last night. We had these two authors, and suddenly the screen froze. It was like 10 minutes left to go in the show, and and I had asked them for their phone number, but I didn't have it. So he called me, and then they were trying to get back on. So then I put my phone up with him.
I saw that. Yeah, I was watching.
And then we were just about to end, and they made it back on the show. So as like with live streaming, you just really have to be on the ready for whatever happens. Other times, I spent like an hour with a guest who was not too familiar with technology, and I said, "Well, we're not going on live for 40 minutes, but don't touch anything." Don't.
Yes.
And then, yes, I definitely think that, and sometimes, you have a guest who's an expert in in their topic, but they might have something amazing to say that you didn't know that they would, have in their back pocket. And that's always a lot of fun.
Have you ever had a guest that you had a line of questioning ready, but then once they said something, you like totally changed the conversation? Or no?
I don't think so. I don't.
Okay.
Not totally. Yes, you could go on a tangent, but I think if you're telling your guests you're going to talk about XYZ, you want to steer it back in some way, either to XYZ or to a new topic, and one that you see your people on Facebook or LinkedIn are excited about. I don't think you just
of course. Okay, it's all about your audience.
Diamonds, but oh no, we're going to talk about food, now. So.
Right, of course. All right, cool. Well, this has been an amazing conversation, Rose. I'm so glad you could be here. So glad you're in my course, and we met through Sri. And Jim, do you have any parting words? And then Rose, after that, let us know how people can connect with you on Twitter or wherever, and follow your journey.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, this has been great, Rose. And one thing too, and just a little Twitter tip is, people, make sure you follow Rose so she can get past that 5,000 threshold, because I've been there before, and you got to. Twitter's kind of weird with that, so make sure you follow her. Go to the hashtag women to follow. Follow all those women that are, or other people that are engaged with that hashtag. That's another great thing to do. Now, Rose, this has been amazing. Great to actually get to meet you virtually. That's what's so
Thank you.
a lot of times with you go from Twitter to live streams, and maybe someday we'll all meet in person. We don't know when, but
Yes,
Another
it
year.
will happen.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. And thank you so many people I know and those I don't know for joining and to connect with me. I am most active on Twitter, but I'm on all platforms under the same name, Rose Horowitz 31. So you can find me on Instagram under Rose Horowitz 31. You find me under my name on LinkedIn and on Facebook as well. And, and then my Twitter handle is Rose, Rose Horowitz 31, as you see there. Thank you. And, I'm always trying to promote Women to Follow. And, I think it's a great cause, and I'm really proud of the way it's taken hold. And it's so important that we amplify the voices of women on social media. So thank you.
Thank you, Rose. And Jim, do you want to tell everyone who our guest is for next week's show before we bid adieu?
Everything goes well. We expect Kevin Colby to join us, and we're going to learn a lot about helping you kind of level up your live streaming game. As we've talked with some of those things today with Rose. Kevin is an amazing guy. Have had a chance to have him on the Amazon Live show, Dealcasters Live, and he's also been on the Launch Your Live podcast. So excited that he's going to come join Tim and I next week. So stay tuned for that. And I'll turn it back over to you, Tim.
Thank you, Jim. Just want to say thank you to all for tuning in. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Rose. Thank you, StreamYard. Which way is down? In that way and down.
It is a very cool platform. It's really great. And several people in my family are using it, and to different ends. So it's very cool.
Oh, awesome. And before we say goodbye for the final time, Kenneth says, today's conversation is so damn scrumptiously, deliciously, edibly tasty good. So on that note.
Very cool. And I don't know it. It's really been fun. And thank you so much for having me on. I was glad I was able to help you out in a pinch when you didn't have a guest.
Yes,
maybe next time we could schedule it.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Thank you all. See you next week.